try to make the D1 level, that I've made it work. It's just crazy to me that I'm still here. So I'm humbled to be on. I appreciate you guys allowing me to share my story and all the questions that you guys got.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're honored to have you on. You're the one with the quite the resume. So.
Thank you so much. I'm trying, man.
Yeah. You got your own podcast as well?
Yes, I do. It's the Bet on You JR Performance podcast. Right now, I'm kind of taking a break from it. So, but hoping I'll have you guys on at some point, just to give back. But yeah, no, it's going good. It's a grind. So I respect what you guys are doing. It's not easy.
Oh yeah, especially when you're starting off in the beginning, you got to edit everything on your own. You got to.
That's where I was just like, because I'm finishing up with preseason with a lot of my basketball athletes, and I'm just like, it's just taking way too much. So I can't wait to get to a point where I can people can film it and then people can edit it, and all I have to do is talk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, well, we'll get more to that down the line in the interview, but
Awesome.
I'd love to just take it back to the beginning here. And, your childhood growing up and what that was all like. And then in progression, we'll just go through everything you've been through so far.
For sure. I definitely, whenever I explain like where I've been and like where I've come from, I like to kind of put it in a perspective that can help someone else. And so basically, I mean, long story short is I played basketball pretty much my entire life. I was a multi-sport athlete. Humbly, you could throw me in any sport and I would do pretty well at it because I think I was like always outside. I think there was no social media when I was growing up. I'm 26, so it's like I think you had like the DSs and the GameCube, and that was literally it. But then other than that, like I had a bunch of like friends my age in my community, like in the neighborhood. So it's like we were just always outside, playing like manhunt, kick the can. If anyone knows what cops and robbers, all that kind of stuff. So we were just like running around. We would play football, but I was like the only female. So I was playing like flag football and like all these tag, like, all those games against these older guys. And so I think that's kind of where I developed just my athleticism and coordination. And that's why it's so important to get young athletes in the same way. It's like, it's really hard now with social media, video games, TV. It's like really hard to get athletes to like get outside and play, but and so I try to include that in my training. But anyway, so multi-sport athlete, and then ended up just like really wanting to dive into basketball. The problem is that I got into the mindset of like D1 or die, like I'm going D1 or like I'm not good enough. And so what ended up happening is, that's the image that I tried to uphold for myself, is that I'm an introvert. It was hard for me to make friends. I wasn't outgoing. I didn't like a lot of the things that my friends liked. Like they wanted to go out and party and things like that. And it just wasn't for me. So I always felt like way different than everyone else. I also had like an incredible work ethic that none of my other friends had. And so I always felt different. I felt unrelatable to everyone. I wanted to talk about deep stuff and I wanted to talk about like dreams and goals. My friends really didn't want to. And they were just, high school. And so I just always had like a more, I was, out playing basketball, outside till like 9 or 10 p.m. I always like running hills. I wanted to do like everything to try to make the D1 level. The problem is when you try to like have that standard for yourself that I'm only enough based off of things that are out of your control and external factors, like at some point you're going to crash. And that's kind of what happened to me, is I just like completely crashed. I couldn't uphold the image and the standard that I had for myself. I didn't have the guidance that I needed. I didn't have my parents and my family were there for me. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. But in terms of like an actual role model within the sports performance, like I never did that. Sports performance or skills training, I never did any skills training. Like it was just all my own. I think it would have made a big difference. And then AAU has obviously changed so much too. So I wasn't educated. And so it wasn't my fault. I had the work ethic. I just didn't have the guidance. And so, growing up in high school, it was like at my senior year, I just couldn't uphold that image anymore. So I ended up suffering from major depression, an eating disorder. I lost probably like 45 pounds. I was like 100 pounds,
Wow.
Not eating throughout the day, probably like 500 calories, like less than 1,000.
Yeah.
And from there, it was just, I had an identity shift. And so it was like, what do I do next? And so that's like we can get into it. I'm happy to answer any questions about that specific time, but it was a really dark time for me. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I want to start there because
Cool.
there's a kind of a lot
Yes.
to get into with that, and but yeah, I mean honestly I can relate to a lot of that. So I'm a hockey player myself. I play Division 3 college hockey right now. Dylan, he actually plays Division 1. So I've dealt with a lot of very similar kind of like mindset things, right? Like you kind of feel like you're alone at certain times, and I definitely want to hear your opinion in terms of if you had somebody through all those years that you were training for basketball to try and make to that D1 level, if you had somebody with a similar mindset that you met early on that you could train with and that you could do those late night workouts or shooting hoops out in the driveway or whatever it might be, do you think that could have changed the course of, I guess maybe that burnout,
Mm-hmm.
or it could have helped with maybe that anxiety that you had?
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's kind of why I do what I do now, is to be that for someone. Mm-hmm. So it's like I train obviously mostly basketball players, but I train a lot of lacrosse athletes, and they are now junior year, you commit for lacrosse. And so they're in that process right now. So it's like, you know, they were underdogs. That's why I love your brand and stuff, is because, you know, I feel like I'm an underdog. These athletes were underdogs. Now they're coming to see me, and they just gain this confidence that, like, sometimes you just can't do on your own. Like, you really do need someone else. Yeah. So, you know, seeing them, you know, get calls and seeing them have like a bunch of offers now, because I was a part of that journey. They put in the work, but I was part of that. Like, that's why I do what I do. And so if I were to have that, oh yeah, I mean, I could have gone D1, yeah. But you know, maybe I never try to like hold on to the what ifs, but it is something that, like, man, I just wish I had someone someone like that. So, you know, every day I just wake up and that's what I'm thinking about, is like, I get to be that for someone else. And then that's more of a satisfaction than anything else. But yeah, if I definitely would have had someone that just taught me like confidence, and like that I'm not the external things. Like I am just like my work ethic, I'm my loyalty, I'm my drive, I'm my passion, and just would have not felt so alone, because, you know, everyone in this world just wants to feel accepted. We crave acceptance. And I was craving acceptance from other people, that the only way I felt like I was accepted is if I were a D1 basketball player, or I was just known as Jess, the basketball player, Jess, the lefty that could shoot. But I wasn't known as Jess X, Y, and Z, like internal stuff. And so it just got really exhausting. And I just wish I would have had someone to talk to that knew, like, I talk to my mom a lot. You know, she's like my best friend, but I wish I would have had someone that could actually elevate me in the sports and basketball world.
Right. And there really is this like stigma around the mental health side of things in sports. I think athletes are expected to be this unbreakable human just based on the tasks that they have to complete on a daily basis to become better at their sport and to level up. I do think it's changing. You know, back a long time ago, like mental health in sports and sports psychology was irrelevant, if it was there at all. And I just think there's a huge market there for athletes to be able to take advantage of nowadays, where they can actually level up their game and be in the right mindset, right? Like you can't play the game to your full capacity if you're not there mentally, in terms of your mental strength and fortitude to actually proceed on a daily basis with such a demanding schedule.
For sure.
But I mean, that's why. So I'm studying psychology, more specifically to get into sports psychology, because I think it's a thing that I've struggled with my whole hockey career, and I think so many athletes can benefit from having not just the physical training, but also the mental training to improve, not just as athletes, but as people, right? Like, because ultimately that's what you're developing. You're not going to play your sport forever. So it's who you become afterwards that is the most important part.
Definitely. I totally agree. And it's just like preventative measures, I would say. It's like, it seems like we only give attention to when something happens. And so going back to that thing, like, these athletes are craving attention. Like, we all just want attention. And so they're like, well, maybe I should commit suicide, and then maybe people will pay attention to me. And like, then we see the post, then we see the mental health stuff. And so that's the issue, is like, it needs to be a constant conversation, and constantly people need to be reposting that stuff before it happens, if that makes sense. And that's what I've been seeing recently, is like, we need to continue the conversation, even like, because these kids get, and athletes, they just want attention. So they're like, I'm going to go to this measure so that maybe people will then pay attention to me, rather than like, it shouldn't be like that. Like, it's just effed up. It really shouldn't be like that. And it's so sad that someone has to go to that measure. And I've been there. Like, I've had suicidal thoughts. I've had major depression. I'm still dealing with it today. So it's like, we all just want to belong. And so for, someone to think that they have to go to that level, that's what's messed up. Like, it's not their fault. It's like what the generation is in society and social media. And yeah, this could be a whole conversation, because it's so sad to see that. And like, that's why I do what I do, is like, so that these kids that do come in with issues, because we're all human beings, we all have, things going on in our life, that they can be someone, if a kid comes in and they cry to me and we have a session of just talking rather than working out, like, that's a success. Like, that's what needs to happen. And so I try to get to that point with my athletes, that they can talk to me and they can talk about what's going on, and I can be like, give them that advice and guidance and just be there for them.
And just to tie it back together too, like, it just shows how important it is, especially for some of these high-end athletes that are they're young. At the end of the day, they're kids, right? And they build up these persona that, they're only known as, a football player. They're only known as, their sport. That's who they are, and they let it define them. And there's so much more to that. And it just shows how important it is to have someone to talk about. And like you said, having a training partner that understands the same thing, to, bounce thoughts, ideas, anything off of. And it just shows how important it is, because these kids can, like I said, they can get burnt out, and as we've all seen, depression, suicidal thoughts, and it just shows how important it is to have someone like that in your life, and to be able to recognize, like, there's more to it than just your sport. And I think a lot of kids get so caught up in that, in the D1 or none. Like, there's more to it than just playing D1 sports.
Oh, for sure. Because that's the standard that we've given ourselves through social media. Like, the standard is millions of dollars, endorsements, sponsorships, thinking that's all going to create happiness, when it doesn't. Like, it's so much more than that. So it's like teaching how to build that identity outside of sports, and actually like showing them, even through just yourself, like being the role model. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the issue with social media today too. And like you said, growing up, that wasn't a thing. Kids go out and play. I was the same way growing up. You're out, exactly. We play home free, or you're playing street hockey. You're outside, and that's the issue with social media, is it's an illusion. These people can create a persona online that, oh, look, like, it's so great to be, whatever. And I'm so hell bent on, just being an athlete, and that's what I display on my social media. But is that really them? Are they really happy? And at the end of the day, quite often the answer is no, and it's just an illusion. And it's a big piece of, it shouldn't be a part of sports the way it's affecting them now, but ultimately it has. Social media has become a
business.
Young athletes. Yeah,
it really is.
It's a business.
And honestly, to piggyback on that, like, I think it's also a result of how competitive sports have become, where, like, with hockey, for example, like, kids, they start playing competitively when I feel like it's getting younger every single year, where they're specializing in one sport. At like 7 or 8 years old, it's like, you got to be playing multiple sports. You got to, like, become an athlete and do fun things, and, like, create teammates in all different areas of life, right? Not just your one sport that you want to specialize in, where you don't even know what you love.
No,
at that
absolutely.
Age, right? And then that combined with social media and where it's at today is just, like, honestly a recipe for disaster. And it's really hard. I can only imagine what it's like for parents with kids nowadays, where it's like, to actually be able to detach and kind of, like, examine what's actually going on here.
You just got so many ears. Yeah, you just got so many ears. You got so many people talking to you. The higher level athlete, it's like, the more ears you have, and that's what I deal with, is, like, just constantly people are in their ear, and just building up their ego when they get to college. It's like that ego can't exist anymore. So it's starting so early. And it's definitely, I'm glad we're having this convo, because it's something that I deal with every single day. And then you guys as athletes yourself, you guys see it too. Like, you see it happening. And it's like, there's so much power with it. that it's hard to like, break through those walls. But it starts with conversations. Even with you guys being athletes yourself, like you guys are in a great position to finally like talk about it, which is, I'm assuming part of the reason why you guys started this podcast is to talk about real life stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I mean, honestly, that's why we have athletes, former athletes, and people who are involved within the industry. I hate to call it an industry because unfortunately it is a business. Like there's just so much involved with it where more than what meets the eye. But and going back to what you were mentioning earlier about the whole identity thing, where if you don't have that any longer, right? If you're stuck on going D1 or going pro and you don't reach that, and you're kind of left empty in some sense. I personally think that, and it's really hard too when you're young because you have so much drive and ambition for somebody who wants to reach that level where you don't want to do these other things that you're interested in, these hobbies. Maybe you want to play the guitar, or maybe, you want to try another sport, but you get so zoned in on that one thing and it becomes your identity. How do you think that the generations coming up can kind of utilize having that little side hobby that gives them a little breather where they can just, oh God, like I can finally take a break for a second and then get back and, go 100% in the gym or on the court, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's why just mentorship is so important, and surrounding yourself with people that have the same vision, even if you don't realize that that's that vision. Just surrounding yourself with like good people, because like I said, because of now with the NIL deals, the sponsorship, there's money involved, the business, there's a lot of snakes. There really is. I deal with it again all the time, and there's a lot of high egotistical people within the skills training industry, within the coaching industry, within just the basketball, hockey, soccer, like whatever sport. And so that is the stuff, like being just in the moment. We're going to learn, we're going to be so much better off so that we can continue, because the end goal may never exist. Like that goal may never exist. So it's like we're just fighting to uphold an image and a standard for ourselves that we've believed to be true. And it may not even exist at all,
Right. Yeah. And oftentimes I find it that like, and for my story in particular, I found it that every time I set a massive goal and I reached that goal, it wasn't as fulfilling as I initially anticipated because I worked so hard to get there. And then when you get there, you're just like,
yeah, you're like, what's next? Well, that's why I like the post-depression after like a championship. Like someone wins a championship and they're like, oh my God, I've made it. This is it. And then you're like, the next day you wake up and you're like, what?
Everything's the same.
Yeah, everything is just the same. It's just a new goal every single time. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So, all right. So now I kind of want to get into how you ultimately opened your own gym. And so you said that you started mopping floors when you were 20. So now what was the whole plan behind this? Were in your head where you're like, okay, I'm going to start working, saving up money to open up my own place, or where was your mind at
no,
that point?
I never thought that I would own my own facility. Let's just say that. Some people have that goal and that's their dream. But for me, like I have done so much pivoting in my life that I never thought that I would be in the position that I am now. And so that's like talking about that whole education system is the education system did not set me up to be successful for the real world. It taught me how to know anatomy and to do like, sorry, but dumb labs, like dumb biology labs that like aren't applicable to the real life. And so, when I came out, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go get a job. And then I'm like, well, here's the job. You're down at the bottom of the totem pole and you're mopping floors for an internship, for a potential job. And, I recently talked to a girl just while we're on this subject, while I have it, because I think it's so important. Like I said, I'm not going to name any names or the school, but she went to this high prestigious school, like top 5 school for PT. And she's asking me for advice of how to get into where she wants to go. And I'm like, that's the problem. Not her issue. Like it's not her fault. Yeah. It's the education system that like, she has this goal. Why she's going to one of the top 5 schools for physical therapy in the world. And she is not able to like have the guidance and the mentorship to automatically have a buy-in. And so that's what like people listening to this podcast, like whatever goal that you have, it's like you are starting mostly, unless you get lucky, and it's all about connections. You're starting from the bottom. So again, I started mopping floors for a free membership at my CrossFit gym. And then from there, it was like I volunteer head coach or volunteer assistant coach, wasn't making any money, put so many hours into there. And then I finally started getting paid for coaching CrossFit. So these big, classes of 20 to 30 people, general population, anywhere from 30 years old all the way up to 70 years old, like not any athlete, like just your soccer mom or your
Yep.
older person just trying to be healthy. And they took half my paycheck. So it's like, I'm not, I'm making nothing. And then again, during that process, when I was figuring out where I wanted to go, volunteer head coaching, diving into physical therapy, internships, again, not getting paid for any of this. I finally started coaching kids at the high school that I was volunteer head coaching. I was like, okay, well, here, come work out for free with me. Come work out for $10. Come work out for $20. I was working out I would sneak into the high school gym. I wasn't even allowed to. Like, I was sneaking into the high school gym, sneaking into the weight room, sneaking into the turf. We had this big turf, out in our high school that it was locked. So we would climb the fence and just hope we wouldn't get caught. We would work out in the dark. I would use trash cans as sleds because, they didn't have anything like that. And so I did get in trouble, but like I was definitely breaking the rules. So, and then training at parks, training on the track, training outside in the pouring rain, like, sneaking also into my, the gym that I worked at and hoping I wouldn't get caught because he was taking half my paycheck. And so when he would it was, I broke a lot of rules, let's just say that, but I found a way. And so when I realized during that time, my boss and we were just going different directions. He was more in the building this massive Globo gym. He had that dream, and my dream was now to train athletes. And so, I was like, you know what, I just have to take this risk. And so I had the clientele built up that I knew that I could afford a gym. And so it's not like I didn't have any clientele. I did have clientele. And I was just like, I found this small space that I'm in right now, 800 square feet. I have the worst turf in the world, but it was free. It's ripping already. I don't have the nicest equipment, but I've made it work, and I have a 3-year lease, and I've been here. And just like I said, during this 3 years, another whole challenge, adversity, things I never thought I would go through. But the fact that I'm still here after everything I've been through in high school, college, and then during this 3-year journey as a new entrepreneur, a female basketball performance trainer, dealing with that whole side, it's just crazy to me that I'm still here.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, everybody knows this, especially if you play sports. There's definitely a correlation between when you're done playing your sport and what you decide to choose as your profession or your job afterwards. You're just much more inclined to do great things just based on the mental toughness that you've gained from the adversity that you face all through athletics. Obviously, you yourself in particular, you had various things that were obstacles that you had to jump over and get around. And, how do you feel that played a role in you becoming an entrepreneur?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's honestly during the darkest times that those are the reasons you look back at and you're like, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in a position to give back. I wouldn't be in a position to have the drive and the motivation that I do. And you can look at through that in all aspects, everything that you've been through, or if you've had tough relationships growing up, things like that. What are the things that you did learn from those dark times? And so I've been through situations, like I said, that I never thought of, but because of that, I'm X, Y, and Z. Because of that, this is why I'm going to be successful. Not that I'm going to be successful, but this is why I'm going to be successful. And so it's cliche, but you really do get stronger because of it. But again, it's having that guidance. And maybe that mentorship, or that's someone that you can talk to, or even just reading books or listening to your podcast, listening to other people's stories, so that okay, maybe I don't feel alone. If he can do it, I can do it too. Because right. You always have that situation where people go down two different roads. One person, you got two people, same background, same adversities, but one person's going to choose to not use those as excuses. They're going to keep going. The other person will. And so it's during that time, how can we get to that point where we do push to the other side, where we do keep going? And yeah, I absolutely would not be where I am now. And I'm still learning. Like I said, I'm really young, 26. I don't feel young. I feel like I'm 45, but 80 after I work out. But So it's like, but I'm still learning, I'm still growing. And like everything that I've gone through, every situation, it's like, that's why I'm going to be successful. And then I'm going to be able to use that as leverage to be like, if I can do it, you can do it too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that you nailed it, because one thing that they don't teach you in school and in college in particular is that when you do take your profession or your skill, if you gain any from being in school, they don't teach you that there's going to be adversity. They don't teach you that there's going to be more failures than there are successes. They don't teach you that. They don't teach you how to get around it. They don't teach you how to cope with it. And, those are things by just like taking the leap and just like taking that step forward and actually applying yourself to something and committing yourself to something, and just knowing and being okay with the fact that, yes, there's going to be failures. I might lose money in this portion of my business, or, I might lose a client. What did I learn from that, and how can I move forward and be a better version of myself? I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day, and I was just telling him how much you grow from the experiences that you have. And my new perspective, honestly, is just sprinting to get as many experiences as I can possibly get, so I can be a better version of myself quicker, and then I know where I can go to the next point and where I want to be.
No, absolutely.
I think it's very important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I tell people, like, anytime that you're starting out, it's like you're in the nosebleeds. So it's like, even that you got the degree, you got the paper, you got the whatever. It's like you are out in the nosebleeds. You're not even in the arena. Like, you're not even fighting in the arena yet. And so it's like each experience, each like choice that you make, each, failure, whatever you want to call it, like every experience that you have, it's like you're slowly, now we're in the general section, and then we're on the floor, and now we're in the arena. So it's like, but every successful person that I know, that I look up to, has like a 10 plus year journey behind them. So it's like, I'm only on year 3. So it's like, I still have way more to go. And it's like, it's all about just outlasting people. That's it. It's, people are going to use different reasons to give up. And it's like, how can you keep going? How can you just outlast the next person?
Right. Absolutely.
No, I think we just
Dylan,
covered it.
you got
That was
anything
awesome.
else?
It was great to hear, everything from top to bottom on what you've been through and all your experiences. And I know myself personally and Joey too, we took a lot away from this, and hopefully our listeners do as well.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And just, one more thing. Usually we, obviously you gave a lot of advice throughout this, indirectly and subconsciously you gave a lot of advice to our listeners. But if you were to give one piece of advice for our listeners that they can utilize on their own journey, what might that be? Or a couple things, whatever.
Yeah, I'll probably give a couple things. I suck at these answers because I tend to just ramble on. The biggest thing, like I said, it's my logo, bet on you. I have had to continuously bet on myself. Like I'm technically like the minority in this male-dominated industry. And it's so, I'm trying to get to a point where, athletes, like they come in to see me, like females can do this too. They don't have to work for a college. They can do this on their own. They don't have to be handed clients. Like I have had to fight for every single person that comes in here. And so I've just continually had to bet on myself every single day, even when life is saying, no, you can't do it. And life is just throwing you obstacles all the time. And you just have to continue to bet on yourself. So I get to a point where, someone comes into me and I can actually help them. Like they want to get into what I do. They want to get into physical therapy, athletic training, sports broadcasting, sports agent, like whatever it may be. And I'm able to give them those connections. And so part of that too is betting on yourself, but having a bigger purpose that's outside of you. And so that's my bigger purpose is like, I have kids that like, they want to be a physical therapist. And so, and that girl that came and talked to me, I was able to give her resources. I was able to be like, hey, these are the 2 people that you should talk to. One at the WNBA level, one at the top. She's like one of the top PTs in Miami. I've been able to develop those connections, and I've been able to like, here, send them your way. And like, go have that conversation. And now I'm able to give them access to that. And so it's like 1, betting on yourself, and then 2, just having a bigger purpose outside of you. And then 3rd, like unapologetically being yourself, And so, like I said, I have always wanted to be a person that has just like wanted to fit in. I've wanted to be accepted. I've wanted to belong. I've craved that my entire life. And so does everyone else. And so it's like, but at the end of the day, like you're never going to be able to uphold an image that's not you. And so, I'm trying to just learn how to be myself, and live my truth and, live how I want to live, act the way I want, dress the way I want. And, have that freedom to do that and really try not to care about what other people think. And it's incredibly difficult. But, those are probably the three. And like I said, I don't have all the answers. I'm still figuring it out. I think it's a lifelong journey of how to bet on yourself, how to just be yourself, how not to care about what other people think. But, like I said, every single experience that I have, every connection that I make, every month, every week, every year that passes by, like I am getting a little bit stronger. I'm getting a little bit smarter. And now I'm able to take all of that, and it's all about just giving back, like just give back to the people that one have stuck with you and have been loyal to you, but also to the people that just like, they may not, need your help. You may not think that they need your help, but everyone needs a person. Everyone needs help. Everyone needs that guidance. And so just pour into the youth, pour into the person in front of you. And some people will walk with you. Some people won't. It's just part of it.
Yep. Yeah. And honestly, just to add on to that, like, you mentioned being yourself and how difficult it is. And it really is. There are just so many things that can get in the way of you actually being yourself and being unique to who you are, right? Like whether it's social media or even sometimes the relationships you have, right? If you get close to somebody, their opinions become very influential on what you decide to do and who you ultimately want to become. And oftentimes it could be your family, it could be, a close friend. But it really is difficult to detach from a situation like that and be like, okay, what do I really want? Who do I really want to be? And obviously, you take the suggestions, the opinions, and the judgments from the people closest to you, the people that you love, and not take them with a grain of salt, but to a certain degree where it's like, okay, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, and, this is how I'm going to utilize that on my journey because this is where I want to
sure.
go. Yeah, but that's all awesome advice, and honestly, we're gonna definitely have to have another interview at some point because I feel like all these topics that we went over, we could dive
definitely.
into for an hour
We just talked about high school and college,
so.
like everything. Yeah, so
I know.
definitely, absolutely. I'm happy to be on, and I appreciate you guys just having this platform for athletes to share their story, or just like entrepreneurs to share their story, and just have these type of conversations because. Like you guys having me on every time I'm on a podcast, like, I'm able to now finish the podcast. And now like I have another client here about to get ready. Now I'm able to like pour into her everything that we talked about. And now it's like this like new motivation that I have to keep going. So that's why I appreciate you guys. And I'm humbled every single time that someone asks me because like I said, I want to there's so much more I want to accomplish, but again, it's learning to appreciate, what I have now, and that you guys took an hour out of your day, to listen to me ramble. It's like, that's incredible to me. And now we can start, like I said, we can start this relationship and this, friendship. So it's like, we help each other out. Like everyone eats. And so anytime that you guys need something, it's like, I can help you guys. If I need something, you can help me because we all can give something. We can all share. We can all just like make each other better. So that's why it's part of it. This is what it is. This is what it is. It's not about like making the most money. It's not about getting the most clout. It's about helping everyone grow. And
100%.
That's where it comes from.
Absolutely. And honestly, that's the biggest thing, but this is the last
No,
thing,
absolutely. No, you're totally good.
Get
you're
on
totally
to your
good.
thing, but no, that's the thing about business nowadays, and honestly sports in particular. It's like they're fixated on getting to a profitability or a certain thing. There's very few businesses and brands nowadays that are created around building a community that wants to go somewhere, right? Like for us, like obviously the Underdog brand, like you can figure that out on your own, what that's all about. It's about chasing your dreams. It's about being passionate about something and chasing your dreams, and working with each other to get there. Like that's what our affiliate program's about, right? Like people to kind of lean on each other and be able to, with the, like you mentioned when you were in high school, right? You were struggling because you were alone on your mission and you were training alone. You couldn't find anybody that was like-minded. So like that's ultimately like what business should be about. That's what brands should be about. And that's what team sports should be about. So, if we can get enough people like yourself on board with sports and bringing that team aspect back and that community aspect back of leaning on each other and knowing that there are people out there that can help you, become a better
Yep.
person, a
It's
better
so
individual.
foreign.
So,
It's just so foreign. So when someone like me comes in,
yeah,
it's just like people don't know how to handle that because they're so used to just like only being cared about because of how many points they score, how many colleges are recruiting them, or things like that. So
exactly.
like I said, it's a process. It's patience. I've had my gym open for 3 years and I don't have the best equipment in the world. It's just me. I could hire other people if I wanted to make more money, but for me, it's not
Yep.
about the money. I'll live in my, right
Yep.
now I live in my parents' basement. Like I'll live in my parents' basement. I'll have to, sometimes I had to Uber Eats, like to make by, but it's like the relationships that I built, like that's for life. And things like that. And so at some point I'll get to that point and then I'll be able to share my 10-year grind or whatever. And people will ask like
Yep.
how I got here. And I was like, you're starting at square one and you're going to have to love that part, not always love it, but you're just
Yep.
going to have to go through it because you can't skip steps. So right now I'm in the process of like, not skipping steps, and just giving back.
Yep.
And if people want to accept it, they'll accept it. If people want to lock in with me, they'll lock in with me. If they don't, like, it sucks, but you just got to move on to that next person.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we are beyond thankful that you came on, and we look forward to keeping in touch as you move forward, and we look forward to keeping track because I think you're on track to doing some great things. I mean, you're only 26, so it's pretty spectacular what you've been able to achieve, and we look forward to.
No, thank you so much. We got to do a part 2. I appreciate you guys, and I will share this and help you guys out in any way that you guys need, just to promote your brand and build your business. And anything that you guys need, please let me know.
Yeah,
Thanks, Jess.
definitely. Same
Awesome.
thing with you.
That was amazing. I mean, not to knock any of our other guests that we've had on, but that was the most informative, the most interesting, and
In
on
depth, for sure.
in depth, yeah,
Detailed.
just very well spoken, and she got all her points across, like almost perfectly of what she wanted to portray in her message. And the fact that she's only 26 years old it just makes it all that much more fascinating because you're what, 21, turning 22 soon.
Yep.
And I just turned 22 myself, so it's like, to put that into perspective, she's 4 years older than us. It's like I feel like she's not 26. She's like a 26-year-old in a 40-year-old's body and mindset and everything like that. But I do love that because ultimately why we started this podcast is like we wanted athletes to share their story. And
having her on summarized, and like you said at the end of the podcast, but having her on summarized exactly why we do this. Like that's at the end of the day, this is why we do it, to have people on like that, to share their story, what they've been through. That was awesome. And like I said, not to knock the other guests, but that was unbelievable.
I know, it's crazy. And, ultimately why we started the podcast is like mental health. We wanted to hear those perspectives. And I feel like we got the best of both worlds because she was an athlete. She told that story, and now she's training athletes and kind of getting them through and mentoring them through the same processes that she went through as an athlete.
What she missed out on, that's what she's filling for others.
Exactly. And honestly, man, that's few and far between nowadays. Like, I can't tell you how many coaches I've had, how many, whether it's in hockey or in strength and conditioning side of coaching, very few of them can do that and kind of give the message that she does with the same ambition, right? Like she's got you can tell she's very ambitious, and I forgot to mention this at the end of the podcast because I just forgot, but there's a balance and dichotomy with everything, right? And I feel like people that are super ambitious like us and like her, it's a fine line that you can walk because it's very easy to push past what you're actually capable of doing as a human. Now,
Yep.
Obviously, I'm a huge advocate for finding a new limit and pushing past what you're actually capable of doing. And it's actually amazing what you can actually achieve when you do that. But as I said before, it's the balance. There's a balance with everything. I mean, how much more real is that with the story that she told us? You know what I mean?
Exactly. I was going to say the same thing. Like, look at exactly what she went through. She pushed herself.
Yeah.
She wanted to be the Division I athlete that she set out to be. And like you said, it's a fine line, and she walked that, and that's you know, the sad reality of it is when you push too hard, and, you know, it could be a combination of things, pushing too hard or you don't reach your goal.
Yep.
And you come crashing down, and you look what she went through with depression and developing an eating disorder. And like I said, that's the sad reality behind it, but it is a very fine line to walk.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like we talked about before we got on air, I was talking about how similar and how much I resonated with it personally in my own hockey career. Like, I was always, I dedicated everything to hockey, and through my whole early career and through high school, through juniors, I was always like, I need to play D1 hockey, or this is no longer a passion of mine. It's no longer a love of mine. Playing Division I college hockey was my goal ever since the beginning, and not achieving that was probably the most upsetting and like depressing thing that, you know, I ever thought. I didn't think that you could be that upset about something. But what I realized, and what I realized through reading books, like she mentioned, and through talking to people that I knew who went through the same thing or had a good insight on it, was that you have to focus on the next step. You can't look backwards. You know, hindsight's always going to be 20/20. I know I worked my ass off forever, and doing that over all those years, my mindset behind it was that I can achieve this if I do things that nobody else is willing to do. And I'm certain for the most part that a lot of people weren't doing what I was doing, but that's not everything, right? Like, there's so much more involved in getting to where you need to be. It's about the connections you have. It's about you know, your genetics, your DNA. Like, there's a lot of things that put a cap on what you can actually achieve and achieve that goal. So, you know, my whole thing, and obviously her whole thing too, is like, focus on the journey. You know, and you know this yourself too. Like, obviously you have goals. You want to play professional hockey. Like, that's important. But what's more important to you? Struggling in the gym every day and grinding out those workouts, grinding out those skates, or is it actually playing professional hockey? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's your goal, but, you know, how important is it for you personally to, like, actually focus on those day-to-day tasks? Because humans are creatures of habit. You know what I mean?
Yep, 100%. I mean, I can't agree. Like, I can't be defined just as a hockey player. Like, yes, I want to play pro hockey, but that's not gonna define me. I know eventually, and that's one thing that I've had to accept. Like, I cannot play hockey forever. There will be a time where you have to hang them up, and that's the way it goes. And, you know, I look back growing up, and I was always one to say, like, I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I always wanted to have a plan B and say, you know, well, I need to be realistic with myself. And yeah, if pro hockey doesn't work out, I have a backup plan. I can, you know, go to med school because I'm a great student and I tried really hard in the classroom as well. So I have something to fall back on. And, you know, I look at that now and maybe I wish I wouldn't have been so conservative and just said, you know, I'm going to be a pro hockey player. And when it doesn't work out, I'll figure it out. There's a piece of me that wishes I said that, but I look at where I'm at now, and like I said, I know I can't play hockey forever, but I'm going to give it my all. And when it's over, I can always go back to school. I can always, you know, pursue other things.
And honestly, that's the same thing though. That's a balance, like putting all your eggs in all in one basket, or like having multiple things that can make you happy or that you're passionate about. That was one thing I wanted to mention to her, but I just kind of, the conversation carried on, is that, like, you can be so zoned in and focused on one thing, whether it's your sport, a company you have, maybe even relationships you have, connections that you want to make. But in this sense of the conversation, let's use a sport as an example. If you're so focused on one thing, you back yourself into a corner and you say, this is it. This is going to be the thing that I want to achieve, and you have nothing else that's going to make you happy. When you don't achieve that thing, it's almost like your life's over. And that's why I think you see so many athletes struggle with depression, struggle with anxiety, because when their sport ends, whether it's because of, you know, they weren't good enough, whether it's injury or whether their time's up, right? Like, ultimately it comes time, like you said, you got to hang up the skates. And this is the balance, the dichotomy that I was talking about is like, okay, that's the line that you walk, the fine line that you walk. If you go past that line, you're pushing into a danger zone where like you put all your eggs in one basket, you're not going to have anything as a backup plan. And then when you go the other way and you have multiple things that make you happy, you can't put all your energy into that one thing, which is a mind switch thing, right? Like I've found that over the years, that the times that I was playing my best, the times that I do play my best, is when I know I've done everything in my power to be the best that I can possibly be when it comes time for game day. Yeah. And when I don't think that, when I'm not prepared and I sacrifice, little things that I could have been doing to better myself in the sport, then my confidence, it falters and it changes. So it's once again, it's that dichotomy, that balance thing that's so hard. It's such a hard concept to grasp, such a hard concept to understand. And honestly, I think part of it and most of it, not just with that, but with like life in general, is just kind of accepting something, like accepting that you did what you could with the time that you had, and that you do have these other things that are important to you that you have to tend to. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's hard, man, especially because everybody's different, everybody's personality is different. I personally, I think I have an addictive personality, but to things that to most would be healthy addictions, but pushed past the point of healthy where it becomes not an issue, but like it's too far for some sense. You know what I mean? So yeah. But wow, what a great episode overall. I mean, do you have anything else that you want to add to that?
I mean, we covered a lot of different things, but I think it was, like you said, it was great to have her on, and just to listen to her story, and just be able to share that with everyone that follows along with the brand. Like we said earlier, this is why we do it. This is the message that we want to portray, and ultimately that's why we have this brand. That's why you started it, and I've been fortunate enough to be a part of it the last number of years. So that was awesome.
And honestly, it's conversations like that really keep me going. I mean, like we mentioned at the end, it's just like there's going to be failures. There's going to be times where you don't think you can do it. And like when she started talking about it's all about the connections and like being on a podcast like this and working with people like you that want to help people, because ultimately that's what we want to do. Yeah, we're creating products. Yeah, we're doing this. Yeah, we're doing that. But the main thing is the community aspect behind it, right? Like that's
the goal and why we're doing it. Why are we making these products? Well, it's to help athletes chase their dreams, to accomplish what they are striving for. That's why we made these products. That's why we make shirts like this, for athletes in her gym to wear. Same thing. UD Energy will be no different. It's just another tool or resource to help these athletes chase their dreams.
Absolutely. And so with that, we'll end it on that. But to give a little update on people who haven't followed along and any new listeners that we have, we are releasing a new clean energy drink that is formulated for the collegiate athletes. Obviously, it's for more than just collegiate athletes in general, anybody who's got a busy schedule that wants a real supplementation for energy, because there are a lot of energy drinks out there that claim they can do this, but they don't. So we spent a lot of hours, Dylan especially, crafting this formula that we have, and we worked hand in hand with chemists and our manufacturers to formulate this product to give to you guys for the full benefit of you, and nothing from a business standpoint. We weren't worried about profitability. We weren't worried about anything like that. We wanted to actually create a product that is useful for you and beneficial for you. So you can follow along on our Instagram. We have a lot of information on there about the formula and what we have in it. Same thing with our website. And you can subscribe to our newsletter where we'll be sharing weekly updates on where we're at. But it's looking like right now, the end of September, early October, that we'll actually have the product to give to you guys. So stay tuned. And as always, thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.